this diagnosis really just brought back to me, no, you have to seize the moment. You have to like do the things that are important to you right now because you're not given, you're not guaranteed anything else than that.
The guest this week is Joe. Like many of our guests, I've been waiting excitedly to share his interview with you. Joe is the uncle of fellow chaplain and future Caring Perspective guest, Jenny, who put us in touch. Joe has had a long road with his illness, and he recorded this interview right before he was going to start a treatment that was going to take him down yet another long road. We caught him in sort of an in-between place, and I love the way that he looks back and looks forward, and yet is grounded in who he is. Grab some tissue, and please enjoy this conversation with Joe. This is Dying to Tell You. Welcome to Dying to Tell You, Joe.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Cody. And thanks to you and just this platform for having episodes like this. I just really find them meaningful and just really heartwarming and even kind of bringing me to the point of tears, and really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And so a little bit about me. I mean, I am a father of 5 amazing kids, and Lori and I have been married for 26-ish years, and our kids range from like 25 down to 15. And so,
Wow.
a lot of them have launched off the flight deck into, kind of college and adulthood, but we still have one at home, and it's just a busy, energizing, wonderful life. I also work as a software engineer. I'm kind of attached to the matrix. I'm on a computer and doing video stuff, most of my work day, but I love what I do. I love working with my colleagues, and it's just a deep and meaningful life.
That's great. Where are you?
I am happy to live in Western Wisconsin. I like to call it God's country, but I know that, it's a special place. I haven't like grown up here. I grew up out in the Dakotas and was born in Rapid City, South Dakota, and then moved up to Grand Forks, North Dakota. And so, the Dakotas, the prairies, the big open skies, just, they have a special place in my heart. And when I first moved here, it was a little odd just kind of seeing so many hills and trees, but it's kind of grown on me, and it's what I consider to be home now.
Yeah, you've been there for a little bit of time, right?
I have. Yep. We moved here in 2006, so almost 20 years ago now, which is crazy how quickly time has passed. And
well, you're a guest on this podcast, which means that you're living with a serious illness. So maybe we could start by just saying, I think it would be fun to start. I think it would be interesting to start with the day that you realize something might be wrong.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great. So back in 2017, I got up to make coffee one morning, and I love coffee. It's just the way I start my day. Lori and I kind of start our day together with coffee. It's kind of part of our daily ritual. And I got up to make coffee, and it was like I was mentally not able to figure out how to make coffee. It was just the oddest sensation and like stuff was not connecting in my mind. And we didn't really know what was going on. We were kind of concerned, but I'm a strategy board game player, and there was a war game that we were planning to go, that I was going to go do with some of my war game buddies. And so it was just like, well, go off and um, do that with your friends. But Lori said, okay, take Peter and Brennan, my two sons, along with me. And they went along with me, and about halfway there, it was like, no, there's something bigger at work here than.
Were you feeling scared about that? I mean, was it concerning to you when you weren't able to make the coffee? And did it scare you at all?
No, because I didn't have any reference or any sense that this could be like a serious health issue. It was just like, okay, there's
Okay.
something not making connection, and nothing was painful.
Yeah.
And it
Right.
just felt like, okay, I'm just kind of foggy upstairs for some reason. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, came back home, and it was like, okay, we need to go to the emergency room. It was on a weekend, and let's start, seeing if we can figure this thing out. And so I went to an emergency room. They took blood work, they did a CT scan, and then they were like, we have found some stuff, but we want to send you to kind of the next level medical center, which for us is in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And they said, okay, you're you can have your family drive you over there. We don't need to send you in an ambulance,
Okay.
but check into the hospital, and we'll, take a deeper dive on this. So then stuff just kind of started to come out. It was like, well, you've had it, you've had a stroke, Joe. And, they started doing detective work on, why I had a stroke. And it was like, well, somehow it looks like a blood clot went across your heart through an opening that, 25% of the population has, and went across your heart and shot up into your brain. And you're fortunate to be alive, actually.
Right.
And
Yeah.
right. But then they were like, well, we're doing some more investigation on why you might have had a clot. And it turned out that my right leg was full of blood clots. And then they're like, well, why is his right leg full of blood clots? And then in the blood testing, it was like, well, you're like low in iron, which is really odd for a guy to have low hemoglobin. And
Mm-hmm.
then they started putting the pieces together, and they're like, Joe, it looks like you have a form of blood cancer called multiple myeloma. And I'm like, holy cow, so that just,
Yeah, holy
yeah.
cow.
Mm-hmm.
The time from when you couldn't make the coffee to the time you heard the words multiple myeloma, how long was that?
It was kind of in the neighborhood of, I'm just going to say like 48 hours. Because, I was checked into the hospital in Eau Claire by the night that I had the stroke. And then there were
Mm-hmm.
diagnostic tests that they were running to kind of confirm things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just felt kind of dreamlike to me. I One of the odd things, I was lying in bed, and they were trying to test my mental function. How with it is this
Yeah.
guy? And the nurse came in and asked me to count backwards from 100 by sevens. And I'm just like, I was so frustrated. Like, even on my best day in a normal life, I'd
I
really have to
know.
focus on it. And I could get to
That's
93,
right.
and then beyond 93, I'm like, I couldn't do it. And so, so
That's
that
hard.
was,
That's hard now. I don't think I could do it.
yeah, yeah. And so there was that. And then, like, a doctor came in, like, one of the final tests that demonstrate whether you have a blood cancer like multiple myeloma is they give you a bone marrow biopsy. And
Oh,
um, I had no idea what that meant. And the doctor came in and said, "Okay, Joe, are you okay with having a bone marrow biopsy now?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, that's okay." And so then he had me kind of roll over on my side, and he gave me this local anesthetic, and he said, "You might feel a little bit of pressure, but it shouldn't be too bad." And I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden this piercing bone pain hits me, and I'm like, "Oh, this is more than pressure." And he's like, "Oh, it's just a little pressure, right?" And I'm like, "No, this is more." And and finally he was done, and I was just like, "Oh my God, that was way more than I had no idea what that was." And ever since
oh
then,
yeah.
when I've heard of bone marrow biopsy, I'm like, "Can I please have it sedated?" you know?
Yeah. Yeah. For
So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. I've
but
heard. I haven't ever had a bone marrow biopsy, but I've heard how painful they can be.
yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
So, so 48 hours of runaway train. All of a sudden, now you have multiple myeloma.
Mhm.
Maybe talk just kind of overview of kind of your treatment course, and then we can get into what happened in 2024 and kind of where you are now.
They kind of gave me an overview of multiple myeloma, and they walked me through kind of some of the nuance of what it means to have this kind of a blood cancer. They did say, it's highly treatable. There's a lot of options out there. And they said, we aren't to the point yet where it's just something like diabetes where you can just take a medication and lead a pretty normal life. But it's way better than it was, even 10 years ago. Like, if I had been diagnosed with this in like 2005 or 2000, they had like 2 or 3 treatments, and they were really rough on patients, and outcomes were really bad. And so patients' lives had really been extended recently by the introduction of some pretty amazing medical drugs. Multiple myeloma has a lot of different types and branches, and it's really almost unique to each person. But in my case, when looking at the kind of genetic characteristics, they said they could tell it was a high risk type of multiple myeloma. And they don't know exactly why, but they know that people with kind of my genetic markers in the disease have worse outcomes. And it seemed at the time like the disease was kind of moving fairly slowly, other than the stroke that had come because of the blood clots. I really didn't have any other things wrong with me, which was kind of crazy.
Mhm.
The decisions that our family made was to kind of go to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, both as a second opinion and just feeling that, um, you know, being in contact with specialists who deal with myeloma all the time would be a good thing if we could get in there. And So our Eau Claire doctor said that was 100% fine. Go to Rochester, and there's this standard kind of what's called induction therapy, which is just, get the disease under control, get it, you know, down to manageable levels, using standard medications for this disease, and really good kind of initial process of getting the disease under control. And then after about a year of treatment, they said, okay, it's very normal for us to do a stem cell transplant. And
Mm-hmm.
in this case, it was my own stem cells that were harvested, and I had a transplant in October or fall of 2018. The results came back and they were a little disappointing because it hadn't taken out as much cancer as they had wanted to. And my doctor said, Joe, you're young. It's really important that we get more cancer out. I want to do another transplant. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I came back, pretty much back to back, and had another transplant in the spring of 2019. And after that, the cancer it was still detectable, but it was at a really low level. And then I was able to be on what's called maintenance therapy for a number of years, really.
How many years did you get after that on the maintenance therapy?
I got up to the spring of 2023 on essentially kind
Okay.
of the same set of drugs. And and I was like, oh, things are going great, Here I can just kind of sail along, and life felt really good. I was leading an active life. I was working, I was involved, with my family, and it just felt normal, and it felt good. And then in the spring of 2023, a number of things happened. I lost my job, which was just kind of gut wrenching. I had kind of hoped to work at 3M for my whole career, and that wasn't going to be meant to be, I guess. And my cancer came back, and they said, well, let's just switch to the next set of drugs. So they switched to the next set of drugs, and that got me through another year to kind of spring of 2024. And then it came back again, and it just exploded this time. They wanted to get me on like a clinical trial. We tried getting on a clinical trial. It did nothing. And then over last summer, I went through kind of what they call a debulking process, where it's basically using kind of old school real chemo for 96 hours each month. I went kind of 2 back-to-back sessions of that, and it kicked the cancer's butt, which was awesome. I mean, it really did. And at the start of the summer, we didn't know if that was going to work or not. And
Right.
then in the fall of 2024, I went on more of a experimental drug called it's not experimental. It was just released in 2023.
Okay.
I went on that, and it has been awesome. It drove the disease to a point where it's not detectable kind of by the most sensitive medical techniques there are, both blood tests and kind of a PET CT scan of my body.
Mm-hmm.
But my doctor said, Joe, your treatment options are diminishing. I mean, there's a few things we could try when this comes back, but honestly, we need to be thinking about the future. And ultimately, we decided on stem cell transplant using another person's stem cells because it's a riskier procedure. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong, but as my doctor said, you're young and we want to give you the best chance of long-term health.
You had been on this drug that had done a really good job getting the cancer to an undetectable level, which is, I mean, that's great. And
Mhm.
I obviously wasn't there talking to your doctor, but it seems like your options were to just leave it or to do this more aggressive treatment with more risk to it. Would you walk me through, or just kind of talk me through your thought process as you were thinking through? Do I kind of hold, or do I hit again? Like, to use a gambling metaphor, which is terrible because I don't gamble, but yeah, do you stay or do you hit? I mean, like, it's
Yeah.
because you're good, right? And I understand the idea of wanting to give you the best possible chance, um, and I also know that there's risk associated with the best possible chance. So I think it might be helpful for people to hear how you thought about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Cody, and it's a tough question, and I really, I guess, speak, just for myself, not as far as
Right.
giving advice to anyone else, of course, but in my situation, just thinking through this. I mean, I I love life, and I Um, I have a beautiful life. I really do. I love my family so much, and
Hmm.
my friends and my colleagues, um, and so um, in the back of my mind, there's something so precious about every day and every moment, and living this beautiful gift. And so, of course, I want it to continue, but like back in, I think it was maybe 2019, summer of 2019 or something, after when my disease was in control and after the transplants, I asked my doctor. I was like, so how long do you think I have? And um and I was, in my mind, I was thinking, well, stuff is going really smooth. I mean, I feel like 20 years is a good number. And he said, I think 7 to 10 years. And I was just like, that was just kind of a shock to the gut. And Lori was there
Hmm.
in the room with me, and it was hard to hear.
Yeah.
But then if you kind of, I mean, forward to now, that 7 to 10 year time frame, I'm kind of right in that time frame.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's not just this unlimited toolbox of miracle drugs out there, and that I've burned through some pretty good ones pretty quick within the last year and a half, and my cancer's gotten more aggressive, and it exploded in the summer of 2024. And you just start to think about those things, and how I processed it internally and with my family is um I I am young, and um they don't do they don't recommend this kind of a transplant to very many folks for multiple myeloma. Typically, there's other options that they would pursue, but in my case, doing kind of this big lift just felt like the best hope of, you know, a longer remission of the cancer. And I ask my doctors, what are the chances of this working? And not working. I think I qualified it. I was like, what's the chance of this being a long remission without graft versus host problems? Because graft versus host problems, since I'm getting cells from a donor, there may not be a good enough match, and those cells could start attacking other organs in my body, and it could be ugly potentially. And so the chances of this turning out right and it being a long-term remission, I asked two doctors who are just kind of experts in this, and they were like, 25 or 30%. And I was like, ooh, it's not the 90 to 95%, let's just declare victory and go home option, but it's not 5%, it's not 3%. So it's thought provoking for sure, but I've just been like, okay, I'm gonna go through this, and I know that it's a big mountain to climb. I'm gonna be one of those ones that are in that 25%. I'm gonna do everything in my power to be in the 25%.
I call to the mountain sitting across the bay. Morning comes always steadier than yesterday. I take the stillness as a sign to write a song about things we've done and the things still to come.
So much of making healthcare decisions is weighing risk and benefit, taking stock of your priorities, and then gauging your ability to tolerate risk, which is difficult work to do. And I also appreciate that you said you were talking to your doctors about it and processing it within yourself, but also talking to your family about it. I think, taking time to really think through to make good decisions about stuff is it's just so important. So thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for being vulnerable with talking about how much you love your life. It made me tear up. I agree. Your stem cell transplant is coming up. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. I mean, for a while it was going to be April 1st, but that wasn't. And I felt just kind of like, oh God, could it be a different time than April Fool's Day? I mean, seriously, do we need
April Fool's Day?
Yeah, do we need to start like a fairly serious thing on April Fool's Day? Could we have a different date? So it's pretty crazy, just the timing that happens, because they coordinate with the donor. The donor's stem cells get extracted, and then they aren't frozen. They aren't put in any kind of preservative. Within 48 hours, they're flown to me and injected in my body. And
Wow.
kind of prior to it hitting my body, I have 3 days of chemo and 4 days of radiation, full body radiation, to kind of, get all of as much cancer as possible out of my body, and to kind of prep the bone marrow for a reception by the donor stem cells. And I was fortunate enough to have 4 perfect matches for donors.
Oh,
and
wow.
They were really able to, be selective in who my donor would be. And I don't know the sex. I don't know where exactly. I think it's somewhere in Europe. But
Oh, wow, goodness.
yeah, and I know the donor is young, 19 or 20
Yeah.
years old. They have
Wow.
stronger immune systems, and I'm just so grateful. I mean, I was tearing up a week or two ago just thinking this person, sight unseen, is giving me a fresh chance at life, and they don't know me at all. But you know, it was pretty special and pretty amazing, and I just you know am really grateful for this opportunity for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
Um, well, if if I may say so, I'm sure if the donor was able to see how grateful you are, they would feel wonderful. So I mean, I appreciate the
Yeah.
gratitude and the acknowledgement that that they are doing something that's life giving to a stranger, and they didn't have to do that. And I think that's an amazing, just an amazing circumstance.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you're feeling.
I would say I'm feeling really good. I have known this is coming, since last fall, and it's easy to feel anxious, it's easy to feel afraid, and I do. I mean, one of the things that happened last summer is like when the cancer exploded, the way that it impacts me, it impacts different people differently. Some people, it really attacks their um, kidney function. And with me, it really attacks my bones. And so when it exploded, it was very painful. And I was at one point, taking 10 milligrams of oxy every 4 hours just to try to keep
Whoa.
the pain in check. So just as with that awareness as background, I woke up one day and I just felt all this pain in my bones, and I'm like, well, shit, what is the cancer coming back? Every time I
Yeah.
feel this kind of bone pain, and I'm like, is the
Yeah.
cancer coming back? Is it not gonna? Is the transplant going to be too late? Are they going to have to do other things? And it's easy to be afraid. And I mean, one thing I think that is so important in the fight against these horrible diseases is to fight this fear that kind of stalks our footsteps. And it's hard to do, right? It's hard to like face, why am I afraid? And I'm afraid that this cancer is going to overwhelm my body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Christian, and one of the things that is just a constant in kind of my faith tradition is just this encouragement to not be afraid, that the presence of this divine love at the center of the universe, that it we can connect to it and participate in it, and that we don't have to be afraid. I guess I just take encouragement that I can face the future, even whatever it brings, and acknowledge, yeah, fear is a deal. It's a big deal, but
It
to
is a big
face it,
deal.
yeah, it is. And I think it's important too to know when to ignore or maybe not take our doctor's advice, which sounds bad, because I'm a big fan of taking our doctor's advice. But like, for example, because the cancer has impacted my bones, there was a time where my doctor said, Joe, you shouldn't you shouldn't carry anything more than 20 pounds. And I asked him about running because I had loved to run, and he said, nope, running is kind of in your rearview mirror. That's not something that would be a good thing for. But like, I love doing maple syrup in the spring, and part of doing maple syrup is carrying buckets of sap. I mean, there's different ways to do it, of course, but we do it kind of this old-fashioned way where we carry the buckets of sap to kind of this collection tank. And, I'm just going to each 5-gallon bucket, water that weighs 8 pounds a gallon. It's more than 20 pounds. And so, there's just this like, when do you embrace life and say, today is not the day I'm going to be afraid. I'm not going to sit around and just wait. I'm going to embrace life, do the things that are special and meaningful, and really savor the special moments. And, for me, one of them is carrying sap buckets.
I love that. And I mean, I guess I wouldn't frame it as ignoring or going against, well, maybe it is going against medical advice, but it's not. What you said was exactly right. There is what's medically most prudent, and there's living your life. And again, when wellness isn't an option, you're constantly weighing the trade-offs. And we talk about this in family meetings all the time at the hospital, which is, of course, it's most prudent for a patient to live in a facility where there's care all the time. And there is the person who's having to live in the facility and who loves their family and loves being at home and loves their independence. And there is a decision to be made. Of course, the most safe and the most life-giving. And, sometimes there's options in between, but sometimes you just have to make that choice. Is safety the most important, or is living your life to the fullest while you can live it the most important? And obviously you can make, the smartest possible choice when you're living your life, but, carrying sap buckets, while maybe not my choice, but carrying sap buckets is obviously important to Joe. And and I love that. I love that you're just saying, fear be damned. I'm living my life. I think I think it's beautiful. And you're right. It is important to think through and weigh those choices and make good decisions for you, for who you are. Because like you said, everybody's different, and you're not giving anybody medical advice. But I think that is good advice, to be thoughtful about how you're proceeding with life. I would hate for, and I mean, I hesitate to say it out loud, but I would hate for something to go wrong with your transplant and you have missed out on your opportunity to carry buckets of sap. You love it, right? You love the maple syrup, and you love your family or friends, whomever you're doing with. It's important to you, and I wouldn't want you to miss out on that just because somebody is worried about you carrying more than 20 pounds.
Yeah, that's well said, Cody. I really like how you summarized that and responded to it. And, just maybe kind of a related example, just in kind of the risk. Well, but first, I mean, just reacting to what you said, the reality is that, like, all of our lives, even someone who isn't living with a disease like this, we could walk across the street and somebody could not be paying attention, and we could be hit by a truck. There's just those kinds of things that can happen any moment to any of us. And
Yep.
so I guess it's just, when you're living in the context of kind of institutional medicine, and you're getting feedback from people who are really good at what they do, saying, this is a riskier procedure or a riskier thing that you're doing here. I wouldn't advise that because this, could happen. But yeah, I think all of our lives, even those of us that aren't, quote unquote sick, there's a whole bunch of risky things we do without even thinking of it and realizing.
Right. Which is, I mean, that's a big part of the reason I think this podcast is so important for people that aren't living with serious illness to hear, is exactly what you're saying. Because life, when you see that your life is predictably shorter than you'd thought, certain things in life become really important. Well, guess what? My life could also be short, and even if I live to be 80, it's still pretty short. And paying attention to what's important now, I have the ability to do that, even though I'm not sick. So, I really appreciate what you're saying.
I'll send the signal flare if everything goes right. Just sleep and dream, all riding on the wave of light. Everything's changed, buried under graves, huddled on the runway, waiting for the night to fly away. And how the years alight themselves and blend into a single flame. I don't think there's a good way out, but I don't know how I can stay.
Part of my treatment is, it's really hard on all the components of my blood, which includes, essentially my immune system. And so when you hear the phrase immunocompromised, I mean, that is me in a nutshell, basically. And so, and like, what that means is, in theory, I shouldn't be like around crowds. I shouldn't be in places where people are sick, because my body, just has a much lower threshold for that. And so I mean, it's this risk management on one hand, and where like I was, my daughter is playing volleyball in these places where there's people kind of cheek by jowl with each other, cheering on their team. And Lori and I have conversations like, well, maybe you should go to this one because it'd be better for me to watch it from home. And but just kind of in that context, as a person of faith in my kind of religious tradition, we, have communion every week, and we get the opportunity to drink from this cup, which we believe is, a sacred gift that in some way is really the body of Jesus, which, on the scientific side of it, it's like boy, Joe, that'd be a really stupid thing to, drink some wine from a cup that other people are drinking from, and yet it kind of feels to me like this is this is sacred and this is important. And um, at the end of the day, I also believe that my faith or my health isn't just sustained by drugs, but that
Mm,
I'm sustained by, this loving force that's at the center of the universe and that wants to be in a
wow.
relationship with me. And so to connect with that force, to um, participate in the divine life, is a sacred and special thing. And so it's another, on the surface, it's like, boy, that's a stupid thing, Joe. And yet I kind of have to say, I'm gonna ignore that medical advice, even though I know, yep, it's kind of stupid. But I'm also saying I feel like I can say, God, I'm just gonna trust that this is gonna be okay.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit more, if you would. It's obvious to me that your connection with the divine is really important to who you are and kind of how you're engaging in this, and kind of the struggle between, well, the struggle with fear, but it also seems like it weighs in a lot to your decision making about taking risks and not taking risk and all that stuff. How how would you say, or would you talk a little bit more about how you do connect with the divine?
That's a big awesome question, Cody. Um, and as I would just say, a garden variety Christian. And so on one hand, it's like, yeah, I just accept the basic uh, Christian creed and believe in this triune God who, you know, loves us and gave himself for us. Um, and, and I think though that it, the church fathers had a statement, God became man that man could become God. There was this concept that there's this amazing thing by which we can begin to participate in the divine life. And it's an option for all of us. And so I I believe in this divine life, and the Bible says God is love, and that this divine life is ultimately in its essence, it's love. And so I I engage with this on a number of levels. It's typical to just say it's love of God and love of neighbor, and and so it's what does that look like in real life? What does it look like for me to love my neighbors, and what does it look like to love nature? I feel like God shows himself to us in this amazing natural world that we participate in, um, and it's in the life and love of other people, and it's just all around us,
Mm.
and so I just feel really um, fortunate, I guess, to do what I can to share in this love that I receive, this divine life, and to try to learn what it means to share that with other people.
Yeah, I love that. You you said it's all around us, which I think is true. Uh, and also, I think it's all around us and easily seen when we're looking for it. And
Mhm.
it's so clear to me when you started talking about God being love, both in our previous conversation and earlier in this conversation. It's so clear to me that that is within you,
Mm.
and you are obviously a person that is looking for it, and because you're looking for it, you find it. And not only that, because you're looking for it and finding it, I think it's welling up inside of you. It's so obvious how much love is within you, for your family, for your friends, for life, for the place that you live.
Mm.
It's just it's a really beautiful thing to see, and it's obvious in the really short time that we've known each other. So I appreciate that. I think that's a good word. It gives me hope these days, when so much of the religious dialogue, or monologue most of the time, is hateful and judgmental. It's such a defensive, ugly
Mhm.
posture, and your openness, your vulnerability, your obviously loving way is it's beautiful, and yeah, it's a hopeful thing. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, Cody. I just, you know, I think of, um, you know, just in the lifetime of Jesus, he was a faithful Jew, and yet, um, he, the our reading today, it was, the gospel reading was all about the prodigal son, and it was
Mm,
in the context of, why the heck is Jesus spending all this time with people on the fringes of society? Even though he was a faithful Jew, even though he was, you know, um, faithful in that respect, he could see that, you know, the institutionalized religion of that day wasn't a great vehicle for his message of love and acceptance and, compassion for those around him. And so he gave this amazing statement about the prodigal son and the love of the father, and how God could love, people on the fringes and on the margins of society, so extravagantly. And
yeah.
and I think, Jesus struggled with the institutional religion of the day, and I think what you were saying about a lot of the angry voices, I think Jesus would kind of struggle with some of those institutional angry voices too.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I try to stay faithful to uh, um, the notion of the Christian church. I believe that the church is a really important vehicle by which, Jesus has chosen to, express his ongoing love in this world. And yet we have feet of clay, and we often
Yeah.
fail, and we, you know, have those angry voices, and we aren't really thinking about, what does it mean to love our neighbor? What does it mean to give ourselves freely to those around us, without regard
Mm,
to, what we can get from them? And
yeah. That's a religion I could get behind.
yeah.
And it's obviously so so important to you and has really helped you through this process of living with your multiple myeloma, making decisions about how to proceed, making decisions about when to do the most prudent thing and when to do the most life-giving thing.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you talking a little bit about that. It's another vulnerable space to kind of talk about your internal spirituality, but I really appreciate that. We've talked through kind of where you are now, the hope being that you're going to get this transplant, things are going to go really well, and you're going to have some years worth of life. But at some point, it's going to come back, and at some point you will run out of options. I don't know if this is the last thing, but at some point you will run out of treatment options. And I guess I'm wondering, have you given that thought, like how that will be, or is that something you're just not thinking about at this point?
It's a great question, and it's a tough question for sure. And Lori and I kind of like to say to each other, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And, we feel like, there's, there is going to be a moment when it's going to be really hard and I am going to be out of options. And I kind of felt last summer like, my cancer was out of control, and I just felt like I needed to do all that I could do to prepare for when I would no longer be around. And so it just, a lot of it is just really practical stuff. It's just like, which things do I do that other people don't know how to do? Just like in my house,
Right.
for example, what kind of maintenance, stupid activities are there that, stuff just might stop working if I'm all of a sudden not there. And so some of it is just thinking through really common, ordinary things. How can I pass on the things that I do so that it continues as seamlessly as possible when I'm not here? And so we've made a binder of just kind of, critical things, and here's how to log into various accounts, and here's the will and stuff like that. And I have talked with my family and with my priest just about kind of the order of my funeral, and I've asked a couple close friends, just would they speak for me, and it's tough to think through. And I know where I want to be buried. I've called and I've talked to our little country cemetery, kind of the head of our country cemetery, and so there's plots available. Haven't actually pulled the trigger yet and purchased plots, but it's kind of some of those things. And just one more example, I guess, is I realized, I have a lot of books. I'm a lover of books, and I've just been accumulating them, thinking, oh, that'd be a great book to read. That'd be a great book to read. And, this journey has just made me realize, there's probably a lot of these I'm never going to read. And so I need to focus. I need to get And a lot of these books, other people aren't going to necessarily care about. So, thin the herd. I guess my decision was get down to 40 books and throw everything else away, and
Wow. Okay.
and now it's probably closer to like 60 books instead of 40 books, but because I keep finding them and I'm like, well, is this book part of the 40 or not? And I have to put it like in this holding ground. And then it was like, well, I could write a little summary of each of these books, why they're important to me, So I've started this little, I call it my 40 book sketches, and each one I read and just kind of write a few paragraphs about, why I think this was important. And it just helps me to kind of go, is it worth keeping in the 40?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of that, I guess, just to make it easier. Like, now that those books are taken care of, that's not something Lori has to deal with. They're done, and it's just kind of things like that. There are just some things that now I've given them away to various people because it's allowed me to share it with them and to specifically give it to them rather than it being just kind of this thing. Well, I don't really know what to do with this, and it could end up in a landfill or something, or and so there have been some special moments of just being able to specifically give people some things that I hope are meaningful to them. It's also fine with me if they just go, it's okay, but they make a decision on it.
Yeah.
So
you give the gift and you give it in your intended way, and they can do with it what they want.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. Well, I have a couple questions that we really ask everybody that's on the podcast. Thoughts about the afterlife. I'm guessing you believe that there is something afterward. Do you have an idea about what that will be like, or hopes about what that will be like?
Yeah, I do believe that this physical existence isn't all that there is. I just think that there's more to this world than just the material existence. I mean, if we just start with the material world and then we go, well, there's this dimension of pure mathematics, which is used all the time, and which it's not a material substance, but it's symbolic, and yet it corresponds really well to the real world. And that's another dimension of reality that's incredibly real. And and then I've had just some experiences that I would just say for me have been really meaningful as far as believing there's something more to this world. One, I'll share them quickly, I think, but one was right within a day or two of my diagnosis. I walked out of our house. I was still here, and it was at night, and there's a few kind of we have a few fruit trees kind of in our front yard, and I was walking out among the fruit trees, and I saw, like, in my mind's eye, it was odd because they weren't physically present, but I could see three kind of dark cloaked figures, and they weren't evil. I didn't sense any kind of malice from them, but I just knew that they were waiting to take me away. And then in October, or maybe it was November of 2023, I think, my uncle Fran had just passed away before that. And I was out on a walk with my dog, and all of a sudden I sensed the presence of my Uncle Fran. I couldn't smell him, but I could, he was there, and I could see that he was content. And he said, "Hi, Joe." And I said, "Hi, Uncle Fran." And I asked him, I said, "Uncle Fran, will my sister Grace be all right? Because she has had some challenges of her own." And at the time, the outcome of what was going on, it wasn't clear if she was going to be okay. And Uncle Fran was like, "Yeah, Joe, she's going to be fine." And that's the only time that ever happened. But it just helped me. It just gave me some confidence that there's not just this mortal existence, that there's more beyond this this life. And so if I just extend that, it's a little bit of a step of faith, I guess. But if I do believe in this life force at the center of the universe that is love, that I'm ultimately called to participate in, then there's a place prepared for me where I have the opportunity to engage with this divine love in a way that's meant uniquely for me. And I don't know the timing of that. I hope that it's, quite a bit in my future, of course, but I do believe that there's, something beyond this existence.
It seems comforting to you.
It is tremendously comforting. And, I would say, I have friends that are just good and kind atheists that don't believe that there's this kind of comforting beyond. And I have a tremendous respect for them. And I think in some ways it takes more courage for them. I say that in a respectful way, just that, to think that, beyond this life, there is not something. In some ways it is a little bit of a security blanket for someone like me to think, yeah, I'm going through this tough time, but it'll be better after this, And so I respect them and go, yeah, boy, wow.
Right. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people about this over my career, and I think the thing that I always come back to is kind of a so what? So what if it's real versus if it's not real? If it's comforting to you, if it helps you through what's happening right now, who cares? It doesn't even matter. It's comforting and it's good for you. So why do I care whether it's true or not true? I appreciate you sharing those stories of kind of contacting something that's beyond. I think it's interesting, and I think it's fun to think about that, and I think it can be really comforting to other people. So the last question we ask everyone is, and I think I already know your answer, but how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a hard question. I think, we humans we want to be remembered well, and we want to be remembered with affection and with love, and to have people miss us.
Mm.
And so I hope that I've made a difference in the lives of some people, and I hope that that difference just has something to do with love. It has something to do with compassion and kindness, and just a reverence for our fellow human beings. And if it can be heading in that direction, I guess that feels like it's a pretty positive thing.
Yeah, it's great. I will say that I'm confident that you've made a difference in the lives of the people around you. Your commitment to love is impressive. And if it's any consolation, if nobody else remembers you, I will remember your commitment to love. And it has kind of sparked this this recollection in me of kind of where I've been in my religious past, and where I am now, and just it's a good reminder that the Bible tells us that God is love, and if that's true, then when we experience love, we're experiencing God, and I love that. I love that idea, and so you're reminding me of that even now, and I really appreciate that. So I'm confident that you will be remembered in that way, because I can't be the only person that is hearing this from you. So thank you,
Cody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You. Yeah.
So thank you for being a guest on the podcast. I hope this was good for you. It was really wonderful for me. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to say, or anything that we didn't cover that you feel like we should?
I feel like it fits in with this notion of a loving God. So I guess I want to just say this, but it's the classic problem of how can there be pain, how can there be evil in a world with a loving God, and it's a big deal, and I can even ask it on a personal level and go, if God is really love, how did I end up with kind of this short stick, if you will? And it's a really tough question in some ways. The classic Christian answer, which I hope doesn't sound too trite, but St. Aquinas says that God allows these horrible things to happen to somehow and in some way bring about a greater good. And if I think about the possibility of a greater good happening from something like my cancer, I don't, number one, I don't know the bigger picture. I don't know the good things that could be happening. But if I just look in my own life and say, what are the good things that have happened because of this horrible, awful disease? I mean, I guess a few of them. One is just that I think I'm a more compassionate person. I think that having suffered with this, it's helping me in my best moments, I guess, but it's helping me to be more empathetic to other folks. A person in my church a couple weeks ago just came up to me, and he knew of my diagnosis, and he shared that he had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I think because he knew that I was dealing with it, he felt like Joe might understand a little bit of what I'm going through. And so I think that empathy is important. I think that compassion is important. There were so many things before I had been diagnosed with cancer, things that I just thought, I'll do this when I retire. I have this time, I'll do it when I retire. And I was just kind of booting so much of the important stuff in my life. I was booting it down the road. And this diagnosis really just brought back to me, no, you have to seize the moment. You have to do the things that are important to you right now, because you're not guaranteed anything else than that. And so that has made my journey here, even if it's shortened, it's made it sweeter, it's made it richer. It's helped me to realize the meaning of life is in the here and now, and seizing the moment, if you will, and not just waiting for tomorrow to do the things that I want to do. In some ways, it's a unanswerable question. We don't really know. But in other ways, I can see just, I guess, glimmers of how a greater good could be brought. The thing that's really, really hard for me in that is to think about my family and to go, God, I think in some ways it's harder to watch someone else go through difficulty and to be powerless over that than to be the one experiencing the difficulty. And I go, God, my family, they didn't ask for this. And it's tough. I don't, there's not just a nice answer with a bow on top of it that I can just say, well, this is why, here you go. I think and that's okay. It's okay. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it is okay. And that makes it really hard that you don't have the answer. I will say, a podcaster that I listen to often says, I believe in a God that protects me from nothing, but sustains me through everything. And that's a slightly different take on it, but maybe there's a biblical reference for that as well. But just this idea that these things happen in life, and especially with your commitment to seeing God as love. Your love is sustaining you through all of this. I mean, I know that it is. Your connection to your people and to life is sustaining you through all of the difficulty. And, through the difficulties, God, love is abounding. I mean, it's just, like you said, you've become more compassionate, you've become more empathetic, you've become a more loving person through this difficulty. So to me, the question about why the difficulty came isn't nearly as important as the answer, which is love is sustaining you through this. And really, it's growing. And I'm just so impressed with your obvious connection to that. So thank you for sharing all that. I think that was a really important point. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thanks, Cody. Yeah, it's just, awesome to react back and forth and to share thoughts and stuff. And I feel like we could keep going for a really long time.
I know that we could. I would like at some point down the road, once you're through your transplant and kind of settled back, getting back into your life, because I know it's going to be a big deal. It would be nice to check in again and just see how you're doing, how the transplant went, and just see, what life has for you. So I would really like that if you're up for it.
Oh, I would love that, Cody. Yeah, that'd be great for sure.
Okay. All right, cool. We'll do it. Thank you again for being part of the podcast, and I'm excited for people to hear the message you're bringing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cody. Yeah, this has just been a wonderful conversation, and I just really feel grateful for the work that you guys are doing here at DTTY. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Joe for sharing your story with us. I so appreciate your earnestness and honest vulnerability. I will say more about what I learned from Joe next week in the reflection, but as a little update on Joe, he graciously sent me some maple syrup that he made with his friends, and I'm going to pack up some beer we can only get in Denver and send it his way. A wonderful trade. You can stay up to date on Joe's journey through his Substack, joewheeldon.substack.com. That's JOEWHEELDON.substack.com, and we'll link to that in the show notes. Until next week, do what needs to be done, say what needs to be said, and live your life with intention and purpose. This is Dying to Tell You.